So someone has called this book, now I can't remember who said it, I really tried. It wasn't me. They called it A History of Messianic Miscalculations. It's kind of just a nerdy way of saying, really people? So we're at the books of the kings of Israel. Like Samuel, Kings was originally one book, but it was split into two due to scroll length. So Kings takes us through several hundred years of history. The three main narratives are this. Number one, the story of Solomon, which is also the United Kingdom. Number two, the story of Elijah and his protege Elisha, which is also the divided kingdom. And then a bunch of stories of good and evil kings, which could be subtitled, oh my gosh, how could it get worse than Judges? So we see, just like in Joshua, Judges, and Samuel, that God meant what he said through Moses and Deuteronomy, that blessings follow obedience and curses will follow disobedience. Crazy and complicated, I know. So Kings begins with David in his old age. But wait, didn't he already give his last words in 2 Samuel? Yes, but those were like his official last words. You know what I mean? Now he's very, very old, and the other leaders, they're just lobbying and jockeying for the throne. Adonijah's one of them. He was Absalom's younger brother. He declared himself king, but David had promised that he and Bathsheba's son Solomon would be king. David put Solomon on the throne, and he made a plan. It included Nathan the prophet, Zadok the priest, and they blew trumpets really loudly. So Adonijah heard the horns. He knew what it meant. He was basically like, okay, I guess I'm not king anymore. David then gives this awesome charge to his son Solomon before his death. It echoes Moses, Joshua, and many more final charges. Here's what he says. Be strong and show yourself a man. Keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways, keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses. Hey, no pressure, son. David then died, having reigned for 40 years, and the reign of his son Solomon began. Solomon made some hard decisions right at the beginning of his reign. He put to death some people who weren't loyal or were trying to sow discord. After two of those, he said, the throne of David will be established forever, quoting God himself and showing that he really believed the promise of 2 Samuel 7. God then appeared to Solomon and asked him an awesome question. What shall I give you? Solomon could have asked for wealth or long life or really anything, but he asked for understanding to govern the people well. And God said he would give it to him. Specifically, he said, I'll give you wisdom unlike any before or any after. In chapter 4, verse 29, it says this, God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond measure and breadth of mind, like the sand on the seashore. It was in this moment that Solomon became the person who is capable of writing Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon. He went to Jerusalem right away and stood before the Ark of the Covenant and offered burnt offerings to the Lord and threw a party for all of his servants. In chapter 4, there's an explanation of all of his officials and leaders, and then after that, there's more explanations of what Solomon's daily life looked like. He would throw feasts every day with oxen, sheep, cattle, deer, fowl, and a ton of other animals prepared in kingly splendor. It's pretty tough, right? His wisdom was also shown. He was solving complicated problems and in the preparing and building of the temple of the Lord. Solomon was a king of peace, and he made treaties and marriage alliances with many of the surrounding nations, Sheba, Tyre, Egypt, and many more. From chapters 5 to 8, we see the main physical achievement of Solomon and what he would be remembered for, the building of the temple. So here's kind of some points of what happened. He, one, continued a peaceful treaty with Hiram, king of Tyre, that David started, because that's where all the best wood in the area was. Number two, he drafted men, but not for war, for work. Number three, he used his wisdom to delegate work to hundreds and thousands of stone cutters and a group the Bible calls burden bearers, which honestly sounds like the worst job of all time. Hey, what's your title? I'm the lifter of things that hurt my back. So 480 years after the people of Israel left Egypt, they began building the temple. That's a long time for God to have no house other than a tent. There are lengthy narratives in here with very specific written blueprints. It mirrors Exodus and the stories of the tabernacle. Coincidence? I think not. With one major difference. God designed the tabernacle, Solomon designed the temple. While building, the word of the Lord came to Solomon. God said he would dwell with the people in the temple if Solomon obeyed. And we soon see that Solomon wouldn't obey, and it's so painful to read about these thousands of people working and building, knowing that the temple is only temporary and knowing that before the end of the king's narrative, it would be destroyed by invaders. The prophecy in 2 Samuel 7 is coming partially true in Solomon, but the big parts, the forever parts, we're seeing quickly that once again, we're gonna have to wait for another king. And that's the bulk of the rest of the books of Kings. Is this the 2 Samuel 7 guy? No. Is this the 2 Samuel 7 guy? No. Ahab, Jehu, Rehoboam, Jeroboam? No, 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 no. And these are the Jesus moments that we see again and again. It's the vacuum of fulfillment of 2 Samuel 7 as we wait for the only one who can fill the shoes of that prophecy, our awaited son, the root of David, Jesus Christ. So when the temple was complete, they brought in the Ark of the Covenant and they sacrificed more animals than could even be counted. And just like in Exodus 40, the glory of the Lord filled the temple. The people of Israel must have been thinking, why did we wait 400 years to do this? Solomon prayed a beautiful prayer of dedication, standing on Mount Moriah, which is just like, that's the same mountain where Abraham was gonna offer Isaac. It's where Ezra and Nehemiah soon will rebuild this temple. It's the place that Haggai would prophesy about, where Jesus would sit teaching, where the curtain would be torn in two. So we're on a topic that's recurring for thousands of years throughout this whole book. But Solomon didn't stay at this peak for his life. So here's a bunch of other things that he did, and a couple of them are really sad. God appeared to him again, reaffirming his covenant with David and Solomon. That's good. Solomon was impossibly rich. That's like good, I guess. Solomon turned from the Lord, serving all the gods we read about in Joshua and Judges. That's sad. And the Lord raised an adversary against Solomon. Ahijah, one of the most forgotten prophets in the Old Testament, prophesied that the kingdom itself would be torn in two, the first crack in what would ultimately destroy the monarchy. And there we finish. Solomon, the man who would write 3 of the greatest poetic books in the history of the world, who would serve God greatly and fail miserably. Are you catching a pattern here? We saw a ton of man fell in this book and more pieces and shadows of Jesus promised, and these parts fit right into the narrative that we're seeing unfold throughout the Bible. God created, man fell, Jesus promised, Jesus fulfilled, Jesus followed, Jesus returning, and the Bible is God's word.